10+1 Questions Real Life in Academia,
a new talk show in which we ask some of the scholars we admire the most about their careers,
the best pieces of advice they have received,
and the tips and tricks that explain their professional success.
Our talk show looks into some of the perhaps invisible sides of academia.
Beyond the pressure to obtain a tenure-track job, write grants, and publish,
we try to get to know the person writing the books and articles that you are reading.
How they manage their time, who has inspired them, and what their regrets are.
My name is Sofia Ganshardash.
My name is Volker Stocker.
And we will be co-hosting 10+ Questions Real Life in Academia. Welcome to 10+1 Questions Real Life in Academia. Today our guest is Justus Haucap, Director of the Düsseldorf Institute for Competition Economics at the University of Düsseldorf. Justus is a professor of economics with a long-standing career and reputation in the field of antitrust and regulated sectors. He has served as a member of the German Monopolies Commission, and he has advised the European Parliament and German government. He has been named as one of the 30 most influential economists in the German-speaking world as well. Besides numerous peer-reviewed publications and books, he's very much appreciative of fine dining and fine cuisine, something that you might not know about him. And another aspect that not all of you will find in his CV is that he's a fan of St. Pauli, a football club from Hamburg. So today, these are some of the things that we might be talking about, because Justus is our first guest in our talk show. Justus, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for your time.
So I know you really love fine cuisine and also fine wine. So given the choice of anyone in the world, whom would you want as a dinner guest to share fine cuisine and fine wine?
That is, of course, quite a difficult question. Thanks for having me, first of all. Even though we are not sitting in a restaurant or a pub, but anyway, I feel honored and also pleased to be with you tonight, actually, as it is. But if I had to choose who I want to have for a dinner guest, I wouldn't be quite sure. It would always be interesting, I think, to have Angela Merkel as a German, as a dinner guest, because there are so many things. She has been our chancellor for so long. I think she had such an interesting life that I think one dinner may not be enough, sort of, to understand how she's sort of ticking, let's say. But as an alternative, I would also like Commissioner Vestager as a dinner guest, given that what she has done for competition policy in Europe, actually, and now also on digitization, that would make a very, very interesting conversation, I'm very sure.
I'll jump into the second question, which has to do also with days and how you organize your day. So I know that academics have very different days. We all know that. But how does a typical day in your life looks like?
Well, it has changed a bit now with the pandemic, of course. So typically, I would the days would be more different, actually. And now they are more the same. So typically, I get up late, probably for many of you. So I only get up at 8, typically. And then I bring my little daughter to the childcare. So that's the first stuff I do in the morning after having coffee. And then it depends on what the day is. So at the moment, I have a lot of teaching on Mondays and Tuesdays. Actually, so that's typically when I teach, and then I don't do a lot of other stuff. But then you have a lot of sort of video conferences with students, or also with other academics. And so the entire day is full of appointments of all sorts, either lectures or faculty meetings or appointments with students, or also the one, since I'm in a number of commissions, like of the regulatory institution in Germany and so on, I would typically then have all these meetings during the day, and all my writing I do actually at night. So I typically sort of stop working at around 6 or something, then I take a break until something like 10, and then I would most of the time work another 4 hours or something. So I typically stay up for then like do my other stuff if I don't do interviews with you guys. Yeah.
We appreciate that.
I would work again from like 10 to 2 o'clock at night, because then everybody else is sort of very quiet, and there are no more emails coming in and so on. And you can have really more quietness and do your sort of research type work, which is at the moment more difficult during the day, really.
And it's actually funny because I think that your routine definitely resonates with me quite a lot. But one of the things that I have noticed is that the pandemic has actually raised quite a lot of challenges in general to academics. So I was thinking, looking back at your career, what was maybe there wasn't a pandemic like now, but what was the greatest challenge that you had to overcome in the last years of your career?
Well, in Germany, we have this very fierce up or out system. Volker will know this, of course. So in the beginning of your career, well, when I first, after my PhD, I left university because I had the challenge that I couldn't find directly some sort of postdoc position. So I moved to the New Zealand Treasury and worked outside academia for 2 years. And so then I had the pleasure to come back to academia. And then the first few years before you have tenure, it's really, you are nervous all the time. Really, but that's also the time then when we had our first son. So you have a lot of turmoil in your life and very little certainty. And I think sort of this is the biggest challenge somehow. And once you have tenure, things start to become. You may have still a lot of stuff to do, but internally you are much more relaxed. And I think the biggest challenge is really first to get tenure, and then things get a lot easier actually. Yeah. I also had my sort of it's now sort of when I got tenure in 2004 formally. I was offered it in 2003, and the times were changing during these days, because now it's quite typical that economists write papers. But I had still my PhD advisor, when we wanted to write a paper, he said, now stop writing these papers, concentrate on your PhD. You always had to sort of, so I still had to write this classical book, which I already had the understanding that it wouldn't get me very far in the job market. But it was still old school PhD advising. And so I had to try to secretly write a paper, and then also the book on the side. I very much remember when it was a very good time, because my advisor went to Stanford for half a year, and then Chris, a colleague of mine, and me, we wrote our first really good paper, actually. And when he came back, we were very proud. He said, "We have written this great paper." He said, "You should have worked on your PhD." So this was quite a challenge in a way, but it was in the end we managed both to become professors. So I think somehow we managed to find the right balance during these days.
That's excellent. If I may say, maybe this resonates with me, of course, a lot. Justus, I also did this monograph kind of model for my PhD, and also at some point try to find this way to have the paper things as well on the side, but also kind of try to web it in this whole monograph kind of thing to get it to basically try to combine the best of both worlds, right? And to get this visibility a bit, right? To make to get the next step done.
Yeah, I think that's quite a challenge for if you're young, and then at some point it starts going once you're on the train, getting on the train is a difficult thing.
Right.
Being on the train is not so difficult.
That's nicely put, I guess. Yeah.
And actually, what you you basically just mentioned brings me to the next question, which is what is the best piece of advice that you have been given in your career? Because it sounds like one of the problems that you had and what a lot of people have is that sometimes you try to seek mentorship, but it's so difficult. So was there someone who gave you like, that piece of advice that you have really been able to use?
One of the best advice I got was from a friend, more or less, who's the sort of creative designer, actually. So it's not he's not a scientist at all. Yeah, but he sort of advised me strongly, and also leads a life. Says you should take risks. Yeah, take risks. I remember very well when I was coming back from New Zealand, and I had offers for postdoc positions both in business and in economics, and even from very sort of well-known business professors in Germany. So for example, from Arnold Picot, which who I liked very a lot, and I said, okay, now if I do my business sort of postdocs with Arnold Picot, that it's almost a guarantee that you will become a professor in the end, given his name and sort of his track record with former students and so on. But if I now go to some less well-known economists, and try to do economics, I will be in a much more competitive situation later in the job market. But then my friend said, in the end, you should take risks. Do what you want, what you really want. And I said, okay, if I think about it, I really want to do economics in the end. I don't want to do business. I want to do economics. So I think that was it turned out well in my case. I didn't regret it at all. And I think in the end, I think that's a good advice. Rather do what you really want, rather than trying to do something that you don't. They say it's safe, but you don't really like it, because especially in science, you need to be not like a little bit good, but you should be really good, and you should love what you do.
And with that, I actually like to jump into our fifth question, which is, do you have any academic models or anyone that has inspired you or keeps inspiring you in academia?
There are, of course, a number of people who I think there's not one single person, but if I had like the economist I like most, it would be Ronald Coase. I love some of it's just I never met him, but he has taught me so much how to think about stuff, and I think a lot of people don't get the message that he's sending, and I try to sort of transport this to students. This is the comparative idea, compare situations with each other, and also the idea that you always need to check the facts. Yes. We can speculate about lighthouses in the end, but who cares? We should check the facts. What the theory was out. So in this sense, he was, I think, today we would say the first proponent of evidence-based policy.
So we need role models. It's very important to have people we can look up to, we can observe. And of course, like the example of Ronald Coase was, I think, very impressive. Now, Justus, when we look at like the qualities, most important qualities economic scholars should have, what are, in your opinion, the three most important qualities that a good economic scholar should have?
Well, in your early stages of your career, you should, today I would say, invest a lot in empirical methods, really. I think you need a sound understanding of theory. And if you're a very good theory guy, you should specialize in theory. Right. But my observation is sort of competition in sort of among economic theorists is much fiercer, actually, than other fields of competition. And I think in the end, then we come back to Ronald Coase. I think you always need to look at the facts also, especially if you are a guy who's interesting also, or a scholar who's also interesting in sort of having an impact beyond academia. then people will be interested in empirical work as well. So, and given that there are so many opportunities now with all the sort of new data harvesting technologies and data and measurement possibilities and data becoming available, my impression is that we will have a long time of sort of progress in empirical research before us now. So okay. I would invest in empirical methods quite a bit. And if you want to be sort of a real good economist in the end, I think you should also try to really understand a particular field that you are interested in very well. Also, what I would call the institutional details. Yeah, what I observe among, let's say, very good American scholars, they understand the markets that they talk about very well, actually. Yeah, so they know exactly what the law is, what sort of the business practices are, and so on. So these are things that you typically cannot learn so much from reading academic articles. It's just you need to talk either to people in the industry, or, for example, I read in Germany the Lebensmittelzeitung. It's people find it funny maybe, but it's a food newspaper, to call it. Yeah, but you learn a lot about the industry, about stuff that's happening, and that also, I think, helps you to improve the models and the type of empirical work that you do. And the same is true for, let's say, telecommunications, where you worked on, Volker. And if you don't have really an understanding for how telecommunication systems and markets work, it's very difficult to do relevant work, relevant outside academia as well. And I think many economists and probably lawyers as well have somehow in their heart the idea that they also want to have some influence or impact outside of academia, and not only among scholars.
So now shifting a bit the focus, and Justus, you talked about your career path a bit, and now you are heading this institute, which is quite large. You are one of the leading economists in Germany. You are famous, say, in academia, and also you are basically in the media and stuff. How can you, what's your secret for your time management? Can you tell us about this?
I don't know whether it's a secret. It's probably what a lot of people do. So it's, of course, it's a lot of work. Work hard. So that's what I had the fortune to have a grant in the when I was still an undergrad, so to say, to go to the University of Michigan for a year. And then I learned that the American attitudes of the students was work hard, party hard. So you need to work hard. Not all, but sometimes it's good also to not to work too hard, but also at some point say, okay, now I need to rest, sort of, and do something else. Then I think sort of now what is sometimes difficult, something that you really have to learn, is to delegate tasks, and trust people, and even I think it's the old story that we sort of, the division of labor is efficient, and if you know that somebody is doing it and they're doing it not as good as you would like them to do it, or as you think you would have done it, it doesn't matter in the end, because you need sort of to focus on relative comparative advantages. So in the end, it's Ricardo and the Ricardo approach to time management.
I like this, a very economic way of explaining this, but it's true. It's like, did you have to learn this, say, the art of delegation to get the proper balance? Yes.
Yeah, I think I had to learn it. Really, I sort of it's. I don't know how it's probably sort of an accident that you somehow realize, that it's working better. But it is difficult in the beginning to let go, so to say, to delegate and say, now somebody's doing it, and I know they won't do it as good as I think I would have done it, and so on. But still, sort of then understand that this is still better overall. To still delegate tasks and concentrate on what you think is really so important that you want to do it yourself.
I like that we approach this from a very, say, economic angle, and I think the explanations are completely coherent and it makes a lot of sense. When we speak about delegating and the management as such, one part is of course the academic output, and this is also what put you in a position, gave you the opportunity to lead such an institute. In this context, do you have, Justus, any academic regrets? For example, a book or an article you didn't end up writing, an article that was rejected, you didn't resubmit. Is there something you could mention?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. There are things where you wonder whether you shouldn't have done something else. I remember when I was a PhD student, I became very interested in sort of the business model of eBay and so on. But my advisor said, should do something else, and I didn't follow that up. And I think in sort of looking backwards, that would have been sort of, because I did my PhD in the mid-90s, would have been very good actually to follow rather this different line of, or possibly, yeah. I mean, it would have been quite interesting also. And then there are always articles that you sort of you don't resubmit because you sort of can't be bothered really. I remember when I started to work on this merger and innovation topic, which I found quite interesting. I had a PhD student and we had a series of articles which they also presented at different conferences in 2013, 2014. So I should have submitted it probably. Now sort of we still have this sort of, because now it's sort of 6 years later that has come up, and maybe it would have been good to bring the topic up earlier somehow. But in the end, I mean, it's you do something else instead, yeah. And I think I try to learn something and say next time we should sort of don't get carried away by other stuff. But it is difficult at times, yeah, not to get sort of to expose. It's always easier to find the right priorities than in the situation where you are. So overall, I wouldn't say I haven't too many regrets. As I said, the risks that I've taken, I think have been rewarding. So overall, I think there's no scholar who says I've done everything right. But I wouldn't, be too. I don't know, regretful now.
Yeah, or bitter or something, right? Yeah. I think it connects quite well to what you described earlier in like the risk-taking attitude you have. And sometimes perhaps just say, okay, now let's leave this for a moment, go to something else. Maybe it's exciting. Then, of course, ex post, it's sometimes a different thing to assess, but right, you have to make the decision in real time or sometimes on the fly. It's a very different thing. Now, when we there's of course different collaborations we enter with co-authors. There's different types of collaborations we enter, and in your case, Justus, you have co-authored with your partner a couple of times. Would you say it's different to write with your significant other than with a colleague, or would you say it's rather similar?
It depends. Sort of every co-author is different. Of course, I mean, it's Christiane and I, we have very, let's say, intense discussions. Yeah, probably more intense than with other co-authors. But I also have other long-standing co-authors, like Christian Wey, for example, and we are very open. Yeah, or we are more than open. Yeah, we say so we wouldn't talk. When we talk about our paper, we say, okay, what you say is everything is complete nonsense. Yeah. When I co-author with a, let's say, PhD student, I would never talk to them like this. For example, you can't be that open in a sense. Yeah. With Christiane, that's also it's of course completely different because I don't know, you take a stroll with the kids through the woods and suddenly you say, okay, you know what, I just thought about this and that.
Equation 17.
So it is different, certainly, in a way. But I think the strength is that you are much more open to each other because you don't take it personal somehow. Yeah, I like it. So.
Excellent. That's cool. Yeah, and you've done a lot together so far, right? And also the sharing economy book was published last year.
Last year or the year before, yeah, we did quite some work together on the sharing economy stuff, and now Christiane is now working more on not so much on academic stuff, but on let's say competition projects like mergers and mostly merger or abuse cases. So it's a bit different as a type of work, but this is
and you probably have like a sparring partner constantly.
You have constantly a sparring partner, and you can constantly and I think it takes a while with co-authors to be so open. Yeah. So without
that's an interesting point.
you really need a very high level of trust with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you write a first paper with a new co-author, you're always careful, not to be too let's say picky and aggressive and so on.
Yeah, right. Not too tough.
Yeah. So, but
choose
in
your
the
words
end,
wisely.
The tougher you are, the better your arguments get, I think.
So you give each other tough love, basically.
Yeah, in some sense. So I think it's very good. It's probably a secret of a happy life that you fight about stuff that have nothing to do with your personal life.
So that's a great secret. That's a great insight. So very, very interesting. So thank you very much. And now, Justus, and we are approaching question number 10 already.
Oh, okay.
It's a shame, but already there at number 10. So, and this is a little bit different then. This is the question, what is the one thing that most people don't know about you that you would like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, well, I think Sophia gave it all away in the introduction.
Is there something more a little bit, or you can maybe elaborate on one of the...
Perhaps you can expand on some of the things I mentioned, because I just mentioned it very briefly.
Yeah, so what most people outside Germany at least don't know, that I'm a I don't know whether it's an activist, but I'm a a strong proponent of the legalization of recreational drugs, and it also has brought me into a completely different scene. In Germany, there are virtually no economists working on the issue, so I typically have discussions with social psychologists, a lot of lawyers actually, legal scholars, but also with the former police president of Münster, who I within the police there's now quite a group of people who don't think the current drug policy is right. So it's a completely different universe from the interactions that you have with economists typically, and I think there would be so many benefits to society overall, and especially for people who are addict or who are, let's say, who are problematic users in some sense of substances. I think it's worthwhile, and I've thought, why don't more economists work on it? I can completely understand it in some way, because it's probably getting the European Monetary Union right is probably a bigger issue somehow. And it's good that more economists work on that issue. So in Germany, I have now a sort of monopoly on drug economics,
which is so you can get the monopoly rents.
So you're basically like the El Chapo of recreational drugs economics.
As a competition economist, you you see the cartels. You see, you see the only difference is that it's not market competition. It's a lot of brute force and violence, and not the I think it's not only an interesting market, but it's something that I hope that one can make a difference in the end to society in Germany, at least. So this is also one of the sort of let's say activities that I have, and that I think it's I don't know, it's important actually.
So the research monopoly in this respect, and as we discussed before, probably some German viewers or listeners might know this or might know a bit about this, right? But international viewers or listeners probably not. Sophia, isn't there an institute at University of Groningen looking into these things?
Yes, there is actually at my faculty. There is a department that actually only studies. Of course, recreational drugs are legal in the Netherlands, so it's but they're not entirely legal. So not all the phases are legal. Only the distribution, so selling to consumers is legal, but the production is still illegal. And they study, for example, the issue that a lot of people get evicted from houses when the police finds out that they are growing marijuana inside. And these departments at my law school, they study drugs, they study prostitution, and they also study motor clubs. So basically, they have it all in a sense.
The whole range.
Well, it's fascinating. I think there are hardly any economists who are specialized on motor clubs so far. So Volker, that's a task for you, maybe.
So this is basically where I can get my research monopoly, Justus. Thank you. Problem is that we record this and everyone will now jump on this research field. That's the problem.
So the Hells Angels endowed chair of...
Exactly. Oh, yeah, that's fun. So, Justus, thank you very much. I mean, these first 10 questions, I mean, they were so insightful, and thanks for being like that open. And I think it was so...
it was great fun. Great fun. Thanks for having me. I hope we can meet in person.
We should meet in person soon.
That is possible again.
That would be, but now, Justus, there's of course this 10+1 question concept we came up with, and this now the uncomfortable part comes. So we briefed you a bit. So we asked you to think about a question you have always wanted to ask someone, or perhaps your academic role model, or you have always wanted to answer yourself. What would be your +1 question?
Well, I would like to ask whoever it is who is next to ask what he or she thinks are the lasting impacts of this current pandemic on academia. So not the temporary ones that we can observe, but what will stick? So how will it change academic life in a medium to long run? I don't know myself, so I would like to know what other people think about it.
That's a great question. We're happy to ask.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and one of the things that we know is that one of our future guests, actually, she's very concerned with the impact that the pandemic will have, and is having already, on female academics, because you already see that a lot of female academics are giving up academia because the fact that they had to homeschool has been very burning on their careers, and they haven't been able to basically meet publication deadlines, the research deadlines. So I know for a fact that it's already affecting women in a rather disproportionate way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's in many countries, and not only in academia but also outside of academia, especially when wherever they're close to schools and the child care was. Not by law, but in fact, often the mothers took the burden and sort of took a break in their career. I think I've already seen an academic paper somewhere who's sort of trying to measure sort of female and male productivity over the pandemic. And as you said, Sophia, it's not doing gender equality sort of any good. So. I think that's a real sort of negative side effect that people haven't thought about so much yet.
Yeah. So
thank you so much, Justus.
Thank you so much
for your answers. It was so much fun
talking
to you. It was really great. We really hope that you will be happy with the final result of our talk show, as you will follow us and you will watch watch or listen to the next episodes. And for now, we just thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.